and we are back with the latest episode of the Terry Schilling Show. I am your host, Terry Schilling, obviously, and I have a very amazing guest today. His name is Mikey McCoy, and he was the chief of staff to Charlie Kirk, our hero, America's hero, Gen Z and my generation's MLK, probably even bigger, frankly. I'm just such a huge fan of Charlie, but welcome to the show, Mikey McCoy.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting. Excited to be on, continue the conversation, keep Charlie's name alive and his legacy, and talk about all the things he was really passionate about.
And he was passionate about a lot of things. And it was, you know, I met him through the Claremont Fellowship, the Lincoln Fellowship at Claremont, and he was such a genius across the board, but it was like he took up all of the most important things that are, you know, the biggest threats to America. He was never afraid of that. And I think, you know, in my experience, I think that's what drew so many people in Gen Z to him, especially young men. You know this, you're a young man. We're drawn to adventure, right? We want the challenge, and Charlie challenged them to be better than the hookup culture and all that. But I guess I want to start things off by going to you and asking you, I mean, you were very close with Charlie. Where does Gen Z go from here? Because they took out our leader, right? And I think that's the big question that everyone wants to get answered is like, where does Gen Z go? What does it look like for them? Who's going to step into the breach here?
Yeah. So I spent 6 years with Charlie. I am, in fact, Gen Z. So I got to not only see the way that he approached that generation, but also had the unique ability to see it from the lens of my generation. And now that he's gone, I feel like a lot of Gen Z has lost their visionary, their director, if you will, their cultural navigator. And there's a lot of issues facing Gen Z. And there's going to be a pinnacle point where they can either go one of two directions, and it's inevitably going to come. And so you saw back in 2024, Gen Z come out in massive numbers. President Trump won the youth vote in Michigan and in many other states for the first time ever. And when Charlie first started his Turning Point USA, he would tell donors, I'm going on college campuses to go fight woke ideologies. And Marco Rubio said this in his speech at the memorial. He said, well, why didn't you just start in Cuba? You know,
Cuba might be more friendly.
At the time, it seemed unimaginable. But Charlie was able to do it. And now that he's gone, the big question is, who's going to fill that void? And I don't know if anybody's really found the answer to that yet. But it is a looming question, and a lot of people need to be asking themselves that, and Gen Z needs to be asking themselves that, because they've lost their direction. They're passionate. Our numbers are at an all-time high at Turning Point USA. We have 130,000 plus chapter inquiries. We've started over 3,000 new chapters on high school and college campuses across the country. And since September 10th, we've had 115,000, just over 115,000 new students come to a chapter meeting for the first time ever on a college or high school campus. And so the passion is there. They know they want to speak up because Charlie lost his life for speaking up, which is really interesting too, because you would think that because somebody was assassinated for speaking truth, it would make people question whether or not they want to speak up, but it's having the opposite effect for Gen Z. But there's going to be a breaking point inevitably, whether it be for the economic state that Gen Z is in, or the woke ideologies that they're seeing on college campuses. But a lot of these Gen Zers are going into college to study, to get degrees, to go get jobs that don't exist. They're going into debt for it. And then inevitably they come out and the labor force and the labor market is shrinking as is. And under the Biden administration, so many illegal immigrants were flooded into this country. So they're taking up a lot of jobs. H-1Bs are taking up a lot of jobs. And so the question is, what is going to happen? The housing market is almost unattainable for Gen Z. Right now, the average age of a home buyer is 38 to 39 years old, whereas in 2010, it was 30 years old. And nobody's really listening to these problems. And so they're presented with a solution, which is Mamdaniism, which is Zohran Mamdani in New York City running to be mayor, which is socialism will be the cure to your oppression, or radical solutions like the French Revolution, breaking down the norms and starting something new entirely. And Charlie was really the one that saw those and was able to present an alternative option. But I'm afraid that that is not going to be on the table now that he's gone. So we need to be having these conversations. It's very important. And the line that I just keep saying is Charlie was always on these calls. He would do 100 hours of content in the spring and 100 hours of content in the fall. And half the time he had his microphone down on the table and he was listening to what the person had to say. And he would talk the other half of the time, bring them the truth. But he wanted to understand where they were coming from. And if he didn't fully understand it, or he got a question he didn't feel like he answered right, he would spend hours and hours and days and weeks and months bringing experts into Arizona, which is where he lived. And he would spend time with them and go deep with them to try to understand a tough subject if they were the expert on the subject. And then he would go back out on the college campus to go fight that exact same question that he didn't have the right answer to. And so he was the voice not only on college campuses for truth, but he was the voice outside of college campuses, having listened to them so much, going to Capitol Hill, sharing what's going on with Gen Z, sharing with his friends, lawmakers, and trying to be that voice. So we need to be asking those questions. And a lot of us need to kind of have our microphone down, if you will, on the table and listening, because it's going to come to a breaking point in the next 5 to 10 years is what I keep warning about. But also in 2028, Gen Z is going to be a massive, massive voting bloc for the next presidential run.
Yes.
And who's going to be the voice for them now that Charlie's gone? These are important things to be thinking about.
No, it is. And everything you're saying is exactly right about Charlie. Like you could actually see him progress over the years. I mean, we've been seeing him on these college campuses since he was 18 years old, 19 years old, whatever. Yeah. He was very young, but you saw him like do this natural evolution. It was like the natural thing that you're supposed to do, that we've all been told. You go to college, you're kind of libertarian, you then get married, you become more conservative, you start having kids, now you're super conservative because you don't want your kids to do all the bad stuff you did or believe the stupid stuff you believed. And we saw that with Charlie. He was always trying to get better. I feel like he was never complacent. Everything was always focused and driven, and he was just determined to get to the truth. And like your point about how he would listen is so important, because we don't do that anymore. Like we literally, actually we do something worse. We listen to what we want to hear, and we hear what we want, and they use that against Charlie, right? They would literally take things out of context to make him look evil or callous or whatever. It was just criminal. I wanted to ask you though about something also related to Gen Z, in light of Erica taking over as CEO. My wife and I we've had a lot of conversations since September 10th. And one thing that we both kind of agreed on and saw some optimism here is Charlie had this enormous impact on Gen Z men. And I just want to hear from your perspective. My wife and I both think that Erica could have that same impact on Gen Z women and help bring them back to the truth and reality.
Yeah, for sure. And when Charlie first started his Prove Me Wrong programs, it was just him on a college campus with a table, and he would beg for people to come up to the mic. But his favorite word in the English language was earn. He said it was the magical four-letter word that everybody needs to earn what comes their way. And so a lot of people think that they can just set up a table and overnight they can have that success. But it took him 10 years of doing that before he finally hit the breakthrough. And the whole build it and they will come mentality never really worked for him. He was like, no, I have to work behind the scenes and build the social media platforms and make sure it works for these young people. But for Charlie, he called them the lost boys of the West, is the men. And he would always say, when men wander and lose their purpose, it's bad for society. And so men need purpose. They need direction. And if they're lacking the purpose and lacking the direction, then they will wander. And it's bad for society when men wander, because men do bad things naturally. And that's why you see in the Bible that it's good for a man to be married. It's good for me. When I got married, you see an order come to your life, and there's a hierarchy of orders. And then
Mikey,
on top
real
of that,
quick, you're what, 22, 23?
I'm 23.
How old were you when you first got married?
Got married at 20.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That is
engaged at
fantastic.
19.
We need more of that, right? Like we need young people getting married earlier because it makes you more serious. You're a more responsible person.
Yeah. That was Charlie's answer to the short-term solution to the cultural revolution that was inevitably coming, is what he would say. His short-term solution was just get married young, have more kids than you can afford, participate in society, and honor God. And those would be the short-term solutions. And so for Charlie, he saw these lost boys of the West, and he found solutions for them. He gave them direction. For me, when I first started working for Charlie, he put you on direction. He hammered it in you. You would work super hard, and he would push you. And when you thought you reached your 100%, he would give you that extra 15%. And so that's really important. It's both finding that male voice for that Charlie is gone, and who's going to be that male voice. But then for Erica, she's in a unique point, and I had a great conversation yesterday with a supporter of ours about this, how Erica's in a unique place to reach out to the young women. And so young men actually in trends moved 13 points to the right in 2024. Young women were far behind that. Mm-hmm. And especially in young people, you saw Gen Z move massively to the right. And actually boomers are moving a little bit to the left. But for young men, they're already directionally headed towards conservatism. But for young women, they're a little more questionable. They like to question things, understand things a little better. They're the ones that go to college and pay attention to what the professor has to say. Sometimes the young men, they're not paying attention. Instead of taking notes, maybe they're on Snapchat or Instagram.
That's so true. That was me in college.
Ladies are exactly. And so these young ladies they're paying attention in college, and they're hearing what the woke chamber of the professor's indoctrination is saying in that classroom. And then they're taking that and they're implementing it, and they're getting engaged on social media and not so good aspects. So Erica's in this place where she can reach those young women. And we've already seen that in the amount of people that have reached out and followed her and gotten connected at Turning Point. At Turning Point USA, we have our Young Women's Leadership Summit that we host once a year, and it's just young women. And everybody would always ask, why don't you have the Young Men's Leadership Summit? And in our own way, we kind of did.
Yeah, it's Turning
Charlie
Point.
had that on campuses, and he reached them in a certain different way. But young women, they're easier to gather and pay attention to speakers. I have this vision of a Young Men's Leadership Summit. They're not paying attention, a little bit distracted on their phones. Maybe they don't show up because they went out the night before, So it's easier for us to do this. YWLS is what we call it. And it's massively successful. And so we already put out our interest form on that for this next year. And we've almost quadrupled what we've ever had before at the peak of YWLS. And so that's a testament to Erica's ability to reach out to these young women. But this is exciting because if we're able to still continue to reach the young men, and through Erica continue to now keep this trajectory of reaching young women, I think that's going to be a really interesting trajectory for Gen Z and young people going into the midterms, but also 2028 in the future.
Well, if you think about it, like if you're a young woman, at my organization, I run American Presence Project, we do a ton of campaign ads, and they're all geared towards different sections of the electorate. And I do this experiment of like, all right, I'm Joe Blow, union worker. I get home from work. I see the TV. What do I care about? And if you do that same thought experiment with young women today, like who's telling you to get married? Who's telling you about the benefits of marriage? Right? Like there's not a lot of voices. In fact, most of the voices that are in Hollywood or on TV, they're saying exactly the opposite. Don't get married. Children are a burden. You won't get an Oscar if you don't have abortions, right? Like your careers are due to abortion, which is totally backwards. Your careers for your family. I don't need to preach to you, but I'm so optimistic about Erica being able to step into that gap, because obviously we've seen firsthand just how strong she is, how smart she is, articulate, but even more importantly, 100% just full of the Holy Spirit, right? Like I know that this whole thing has been so emotional for you guys. I think, I'm not even going to compare the emotions that my family and I have felt during this whole last month, but I'll tell you what, man, that memorial service, it was like a punch right in the chest when Erica's pointed out these lost boys of the West and how the guy that killed Charlie, is exactly the type of guy that Charlie was trying to save, right? And to forgive him in front of the whole world, and to be still fired up and ready to go and not backing down. That's the Holy Spirit. And that combination of smart, strong, articulate, full of the Holy Spirit, that's exactly what's going to change this next generation of women.
Yeah. And if you look at the three biggest assassins in the recent decade, all three of them are Gen Z. Luigi Mangione, Tyler Robinson, Matthew Crooks. And so that is what happens when young men wander. And when they wander, they find things that are not good for them, not good for their soul, not good for their humanity, not good for society. And when they lean into it, there's an injustice that they've seen in their life. And eventually that injustice gets to a boiling point. And if they're not presented with truth, and not presented with truth in the right capacity, which is what Charlie was dedicating his entire life to, they turn to radical action.
Yes.
And so that is something really important that I don't think enough people have pointed out about how you can find the right solution for Gen Z, but also for young men. And you don't necessarily see that with young women, but you do see that with young men. And so for young women, the other thing that's really important is there's a trend that you get married in your late 30s and you kind of get married to your job before you can have a family. And so it's in vogue to kind of get married to your career and to build a career before you have children. And Charlie would warn about this and somewhat get in trouble every once in a while, that if women don't get married by a certain age, the time starts clicking. And for men, they wander and they go crazy and they're all over the place. But for women, they're more organized. And if you are more organized, you can make that plan for your life earlier, or else before it's too late, you listen to society. You're 39 and then you choose to have a family, and maybe it's too late, maybe it's too hard to. And so these are the questions that need to be presented to young women. And for young men, they're lacking big direction entirely. And so that's what we're trying to do.
You know, what's interesting is, we all know Charlie was very well read, and, seeing all his speeches in last month has made me go back to reading. But one book that I had just finished right before he was assassinated is Men in Marriage by George Gilder, which was written in 1978 or something crazy. And I know for a fact Charlie read that, because that is like the central message in that book, that men need marriage to become civilized. And I think the caption of it is something really beautiful, that civilization is built by men with families to feed, right? And it's look, you're your father's son, Rob McCoy. He's an amazing guy. But you really aren't living unless you're living for everyone else and for the people in your life that you love. Like, if you're just living for yourself, you have a very empty life. And that's why marriage, I think, is so important. That's why having children is so important, is because that's the first time when you're kind of forced by biology to live for other people. And it's really beautiful. And that's how God designed it. And it all goes awry when we screw that up.
Yeah. And going back to what I said earlier, God was the one that said it's not good for man to be alone.
Yes.
And that was for a reason. Men are lacking direction. And when they lack direction, they wander. And when they wander, bad things happen. But the married man is a totally different thing. When you're presented with the necessity to provide for a family, for children, something clicks inside of you, deep inside of you. And it's this live or die sensation, where if I do not provide for this family, there's going to be something very bad.
Yes.
And it's in our genetics.
Yes.
And for men, when it's something much deeper, and it's the way God designed us. But when you have to provide for your wife and children, you will go out and do whatever is necessary. And I've seen this so much. I was talking to one of our supporters a couple of weeks ago about, he was working delivering beer when he had his first kid. And he realized this isn't going to work. And so he then started a metal shop to start building parts for spaceships, because it was the only thing that he could think of that could make enough money at the time. Now he's wildly successful, but that necessity drives men to a point where it's literally live or die. And it's in our DNA that we need to provide for our family, provide for our children, provide for our wife. And it's a protect, live or die mentality. It's really cool, actually.
100%. 100%. And it's, look, we shouldn't be surprised at this, because God designed it.
Yeah.
And he's super smart, way smarter than we'll ever be,
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So look, you were his chief of staff. One thing I give Turning Point tons of credit all the time. But one thing I will especially laud all of you guys at is you're telling stories about Charlie in the aftermath. I mean, one, it's so courageous just to get up there as emotionally drained and physically drained as it is in these times, but to get up there and share these stories, like, we have to keep doing it. I think a lot of people have Charlie stories. So I kind of wanted to get your Charlie story. Like, how did you meet him? When did you meet him? Like, how did that come to be?
Yeah, I met him when, well, I was always a very big fan of his. And then my dad, I just came across the video. It was nice to rewatch it. But I met him on social media first. And then my dad ran into him at an event, took a video. He said, hey, Michael, I'd love to meet you one day. And that was kind of the start of his relationship with my dad. He came to speak at my father's church. Afterwards, I drove him and then his then girlfriend, Erica, to the airport. It was bad traffic that day, thank God. And I got the opportunity to just meet him.
Thank God for the extra time, right? Like, when do you thank God for traffic?
Thank God for And I got to just get to know him at the end. I told him I was going to college. He told me not to go to college. It was before his college scam book had come out. So I basically got the introduction to the book verbally, and I decided not to go to college. And
you don't need to go to college.
Lead.
It's a waste of time, unless you're going to be a doctor, right, or a lawyer,
or an engineer,
right? Yeah, but it's a waste of time, and even worse, it's a mortgage of debt. Yeah, that's going to keep you from having a family and getting married. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, and that's a super important point that you made, and something that I don't think the older generations understand for their children, because for them, it was much cheaper at the time. For them, it was where they found themselves, where they made relationships to go start businesses, business partners. And it was totally different for older people, the older generation, boomers, etc., than it is for younger people now. It's almost 3-5x the cost. And the labor market is just not there anymore. So, and the things they're studying aren't what you were studying when you were in college. It's lesbian underwater basket weaving, and just it's
I
useless
guarantee,
degrees.
I don't even need to Google it. I guarantee that is a major and a specialty in college.
It exists. Anyways, so Charlie said, don't go to college. Glad I listened to him. Came and worked at Turning Point, and went on to spend just 6 years with him, just over 6 years with him. Traveled everywhere with him, had the opportunity to, oftentimes I would joke that Charlie and I traveled and were with each other more than we were with our wives, which oftentimes somewhat was true on a week-long trip. And we had the opportunity to see the nation together. He had already been to almost every state, and at the time I had only been to 2 states, and he was like, I'm going to change that.
Wow.
He did, and I went to 48 of the states, and he took me all over the world, and I really got to glean from him and learn from him. That was the best part of it. And looking back, I realized spending 6 years with Charlie was better than any degree I could have gotten. And I guarantee you I learned more than I would have learned in any university that I would have gone to.
1,000,000% is that is true. All right, so I want to get to, you had this amazing post on Instagram that I saw. It got shared to me, and it just blew me away. And you were like the perfect guy to write this because of how much time you spent with him and how often you were together. And by the way, like, male friendships is absolutely something that needs to come back. And I feel like in the age of the internet and hookup culture and like just this isolation that we're constantly going through, it's been killed. So it's amazing. But you wrote this post, the 7 things that you learned from Charlie Kirk. And I just want to go through those and just kind of like unpack it a little bit, because it hit me and it's so wise. Yeah. But the first thing you listed was to steward every second. And you said, Charlie wasn't the hardest worker in the room, but the most mission driven. He wasted the least. Yeah. That is so mind blowing. You know, we're always just most of us are just trying to rush through the day, get all of our tasks done. And you even point out in here that, like, certainly people work harder and spend more time in the office, but they're wasting time. And it's just, it's so why. I mean, was that something you like discovered upon reflecting on your time with him, or was this something that was just kind of like you picked up on pretty early?
It's something you pick up with Charlie, and it's just, he literally wasted no time. Yeah, it wasn't that he worked the most, but it's that he wasted the least. And he slept 8 hours a night, and then somehow he would wake up. He didn't have social media on his phone. He had deleted it because he saw that it was a distraction from everything that he had to do. So he was wasting the least by running Turning Point USA, running Turning Point Action, running a super PAC. On top of that, traveling like crazy. He did a 3-hour podcast every single day. And then on top of that, he's flying all over the country, doing 100 hours of campus content in the spring and then 100 hours in the fall. And then the in-between, he has a Student Action Summit in Florida, and Young Women's Leadership Summit and America Fest, and all of our events that we host, and then other events that are bringing him out to speak. And he was just always on the road, always had something. He loved to be busy, but he didn't love busy work.
Yes.
He loved work that was meaningful. And so if there was something on his schedule or something that he felt like wasted his time, he would get rid of it immediately. And he would make sure that that never happened again. And he got to a point where everything he was doing was meaningful, because he just didn't want to waste time. He wanted to steward literally every second of his life, both in his time at the office, but then also in his time at home with his family and his children. So he was the best man to steward his time. It's something I learned from him. It's just amazing.
Yeah. And like when I first read that, and as I'm hearing you talk about it, I do think that like a lot of men who focus on just working hard and just even doing the busy work, even though they might not realize it, they need to get burnt out, right? And I think that the Charlie way of doing it, where you're focused and you're mission driven and you're not wasting time, I actually think that that's like the solution to getting burnt out, and it probably leads to more joy.
It does lead to more joy. You feel more accomplished. You feel like you actually have attained things and made a change in the world. And you, at the end of the day, you look back and you're seeing everything you've done, and you realize, wow, I had a good day. I had a productive, meaningful day. And I don't think a lot of people can say that about themselves. I know some billionaires that don't even do that. And Charlie was able to accomplish so much. It's just amazing. Yeah.
The other thing that you pointed out was that discipline was his default. And you said something very funny, which I witnessed. He took his health more seriously than most people take their careers. Like, and I mean, we all know, like, he had this crazy diet. Like, he did not eat really junk food at all. What was that discipline from? Like, I mean, because it wasn't just the diet, it was everything.
Exactly. And I actually just had this conversation with Erica yesterday on our way back from DC, just reflecting on everything. He was the most disciplined person I have ever met. Probably anybody who came in contact with him ever met. And a lot of people who are disciplined, you say, oh, it's just because, they're type A or they're born to be organized. Charlie was not an organized person. In fact, he was a little bit cluttery and messy, but he was the most disciplined when it comes to things that enhanced his life and his mission and the health of his body and the temple that God provided him with. And so he would list these hierarchy of things. The body is the most important. My family is the most important. The organization is the most important. And the micro things like keeping something clean or in order wasn't as important to him as the discipline to keep the macro in order. So he was literally the most disciplined person I ever met, down to what he ate and how he lived his life, what events he chose to go to versus what events he chose to maybe postpone or not go to. And that's something that we can all learn from on how to live a disciplined life. You don't have to be born the most organized person. You don't have to be type A. You just have to choose to be disciplined, to take care of your body. He didn't drink alcohol. He chose not to. He said it was something that slowed him down, slowed the mind down, and so therefore it was cut. It was out of there. It wasn't a necessity.
Mikey, I'll tell you, I benefited from him not drinking, because when we did the Lincoln Fellowship at Claremont, it was in Las Vegas, because this is still during the shutdown, and California
I was with him.
Totally closed. But he didn't drink or gamble, and so because of that, I lost all my money on the first day. So because of that, we actually got to spend more time together than if I had, we were both into gambling. But I wonder, the thing is like, I also think that Charlie had this humility about him. And I don't mean the the humility, the definition that I think most Americans think of, which is like, I'm not good enough, like I'm not good. The real definition of humility is an honest assessment of your strengths and weaknesses. And as you were talking about him being cluttered and a bit disorganized, like he was open about that. And he hired people that were organized and strong where he was weak. And like, I think that's such a key to leadership just in general, is recognizing where you're strong, recognizing where you're weak, and being confident in that, and being okay when people help you where you're weak.
Yeah. I always just say Charlie was a people collector, because he was the first to acknowledge where he had a weakness and where he needed help. And then he was the first to ask for help. And I said that earlier when he was on college campuses. If he got a question that he felt like he didn't have the right answer, which is hilarious because he did give the right answer. He just didn't give the right answer he wanted to give to the extent that he wanted to give it. He was the first to ask for help. He would literally get in the car from the college campus, and he would be on the way to the airport, and he would call someone. He'd be like, hey, I need your help. I got this question. I didn't know how to answer it. Help me out. And in his life, he would hire people to help him where he was weak. If he didn't want social media on his phone because he felt as though it was a weakness in his life, he had a whole team that managed social media for him. And he had the say in what was posted. And he would come into the office and say, this is good, this is bad, let's hold on that one. But he decided to bring people in to help him where he was weak. And that's something else that we can learn. Everybody can learn. I'm weak here. I'm going to be the first to acknowledge it. And I can ask for help, because that's something that inevitably you find yourself in a position where you have so many people that help you with things that you've just become this macro man or woman who's able to accomplish so much because the things that slow you down in life have been removed. They're weights that have just been removed. So it's really cool.
I would post his passing. I went through my phone and our text exchange, and this gets to the next point that you made, which is ask the right questions daily. And like several times throughout the year, since I met him, he was, how's the fight going? How can I help? What needs to get done? Where are we at? Like, he was always like, I mean, I think you were talking about a broader point than that, but he was always asking, like, what can I do to serve the Lord? What can I do to serve America? Like what, but always. I found that like some of the smartest people ever are constantly asking questions of themselves and of others to learn more. When I met President Trump the first time, like I was blown away by how many questions he asked. And I just think it's a real reflection of who these people are when you're actually curious and you're also giving of yourself.
Yeah. I referenced that quote he has on his desk. It's literally right across the way in his office still. And it's just 3 questions. And every single day he would come and he'd sit in his office and he'd look at those 3 questions, and it would help him navigate how to handle things. But he would joke that every time he did a Fox News hit or a podcast, he would watch it back. And he said, it's no different than an athlete watching game tape. And he would ask you, as soon as he was done on a campus, he would get in the car and he'd say, how did I do? Do you think, what question do you think I did better on? Or I think I could have answered that better. What do you think? And so I always had to be listening to his speeches and podcasts, because he would ask me and he would expect the answer from me, and not just me, but everybody around him. So everybody had to kind of be ready to give him an answer, because he wanted feedback. He always wanted to be better. Again, it was game tape to him. So he wanted to be the better athlete and the better man. And it was really important to him. He had questions littered around his office. He would journal religiously. He would always have these notebooks with him, and he would just be journaling in there, and he would have a question mark, and then he would star it and circle it. And that was super important to him. And I think that's something we can all learn from. It's definitely something I do. Every single day I'll ask questions, and I'll rewatch things, and it's watching game tape, like Charlie used to say. And so we all think about that at the office every single day, where what questions can we ask today? What game tape are we rewatching? How could we have done better? It's something that lives on in all of his staff. Yeah.
Erica gave this quote in the New York Times, and it was about how he took the college campus tour so seriously. It was literally like his Super Bowl. He was constantly whiteboard sessions and debate, mock debates, and he's always trying to get better. But I think this also goes to the next point you pointed out, which is learn before you lead. And the quote you pulled out was, that I pulled out from Charlie is, leadership without confidence collapses fast. And I think that's so true. Like, first of all, once people realize that you're full of it and you don't really know what you're talking about, they're not going to follow you. But also I find that in DC and across the country, there are all these people that have opinions and are telling people what to do, and they have no clue what reality is or what the truth is or what the best solution is. They just like to have an opinion.
Yeah. Charlie, and I think I quoted, I don't remember in that one, but Charlie, my first job when I started with him is he wanted to make sure that I watched every single Dennis Prager video, every single Prager 5-minute video, every single Hillsdale online course. And because he was a wealth of knowledge. It was who Charlie was, because he learned from it. And if he was making another leader, he wanted to make sure that they had that foundation. And so his wasn't a false confidence, which is what he would often say, is most people go into a room pretending to be sophisticated, but they had no idea what they were talking about. They didn't prep for a subject. And so that's what Charlie wanted. And the confidence that he had came from learning beforehand. And Dr. Arnn quoted this at the memorial service in Arizona when he came up. He said, I met this young man. I didn't take him seriously. And he told me he was changing culture. And my question to him was, what's culture? Charlie couldn't answer it. And he was so embarrassed that he couldn't answer it. So Charlie went back home, took the first Hillsdale online course that he could find, and found Dr. Arnn's number, texted him a screenshot of this completed certificate. Dr. Arnn said, I don't even know how he got my number, but the young man would go on to do that 31 times, which is the amount of courses that Hillsdale had to offer. And that Charlie's confidence came from the foundation that he laid from understanding, not just understanding culture and understanding philosophy and Aristotle and Socrates and American history, but the Bible too. And that was the cornerstone of his everything that he did in life. And he loved God, so he wanted to understand God. And so he would go deeper on that every single time he had the opportunity to. Every single morning he would send a Bible verse to everybody in his contacts. And it was the cornerstone for everything. So your confidence comes from your ability to educate yourself and to understand topics and things like that.
Can I ask you, like, because, you know, you see him doing these college campus tours and giving these speeches, and he just like rattles off scripture. I can actually like recite scripture, but when it comes to like the verses and which book, like, you know, it's in there, but I'm terrible at like the specifics of it. Did he have a photographic memory, or did he have to like really study?
No, he didn't. And that's something he would always say when he'd meet young people, like, Charlie, how do you do it? I want to do it, but I don't know how to study. I don't know where to start. And he would always say, I don't have photographic memory. I just study it enough to understand it. And he would, before he'd be like, okay, I think I'm going to get this question about biblical slavery in the Old Testament and some random Levitical law. So he would go deep on it, and he would spend an hour the day before, prove me wrong, prepping on that exact Levitical law. And it was the Holy Spirit totally had an anointing on Charlie, because the following day he would get that question. He was prepped for it. But he just always was prepping. But no, he did not have a photographic memory. And this is something I just keep trying to relate to people. He wasn't type A. He wasn't born organized. He was just disciplined, which is something you can all learn. He didn't have a photographic memory. People think he did, but no, he was just disciplined to learn. And so that's something we can literally all do if you want to be more and more like Charlie Kirk, which is something we should all strive to do. Start by taking every single Hillsdale online course. Charlie for Hillsdale.com was the one that he would always push people towards. And he said it changed him, changed everybody, and it was really important to him.
The other thing that you wrote, the other lesson you learned is faith is your engine. And you said something really mind-blowing, which is that Charlie didn't fit God in. He built his entire life around him.
Yeah.
I think that's so, I mean, that came out, right? And how he acted, how he behaved, how he responded. There was an interesting interview that hit my wife, and she shared it with me. And he was on a podcast, the whatever podcast, and there's this OnlyFans girl, and she's going on and on about how she loves making these videos. And like, you can see like this pain in Charlie's heart. Like he's like, but he's not like repulsed by her, which I think is a very big temptation. It's more like, and he even says like, well, I hope you find something that actually like, rewards you and uplifts your dignity as a person. And it was just such a God moment, right? He really did build his whole life around him.
Charlie got this from Dennis Prager, but he would quote it all the time, and he had it written in his office, and I have it written in my office at home. But it was, the necessity for a God is oftentimes a better argument than the existence of a God. Because when you have God in your life, there's an order, there's a hierarchy, there's a peace that comes with it. So Charlie would oftentimes say, there's something that you are missing. I think you know that. And when you find it, there's going to be an order in your life. And I would encourage you to start by reading the Bible. And God brought that order. And so Charlie could go deep and spend hours arguing about the existence of God. He would win that debate. But he would oftentimes only have 30 seconds with a college student or 30 seconds on the whatever podcast. And so he would say, I hope you find what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And they would be a little confused. Wow, well, what are you talking about? And maybe off camera, he'd say, well, what you're looking for is order and something that maybe you're missing. Maybe you didn't have the best parents growing up. Maybe you were affected by trauma in your life. But there's an order, and it's something that you're missing, and you know that you're missing it. And you can start by finding it. I would tell you can find that in God by reading the Bible. And if you believe me, you know you're missing something. And so when you start by reading the Bible, you will find that missing order in your life that you need. And it was beautiful. He would do this all the time. And Andrew from our team pointed out the fact that these prove me wrongs were labeled as prove me wrongs, and people would come to see Charlie destroy libs. But in reality, they were mini tent revivals. And he was bringing the gospel to so many of these young people who aren't hearing it at home, aren't hearing it on campus, but they're hearing it from Charlie's own mouth. And so how can you be the mini Charlie Kirk in your life? How can you bring that example to people who are hurting around you? And Charlie was a busy man. And for most people watching this, he was probably busier than you, but he still found the time to bring the gospel and the message of peace and understanding to people that were missing that order in their life. So you can do the same too.
The other thing I found interesting with him that you pointed out in these lessons is the Sabbath and his family. And, you know, I learned early on in my friendship with him that he observed the Sabbath, and basically, you know, he would turn off his phone and just kind of disconnect from Friday evening all the way through Sunday or Saturday evening. And I didn't appreciate that until I went to Israel in August, and we did it. We observed the Sabbath, and my goodness, I get it, right? I totally get unplugging. I actually bought this little thing called a brick, and you tap your phone, it shuts off all your social media, so you can just get calls and texts, whatever. But man, it is, you don't realize how much work these phones are, right? Like it's not for entertainment or enjoyment. Like they're just constantly inundating you with messages and advertising, and they're collecting your data. Like that's labor itself. Yeah. Charlie, every Friday night, without skipping a beat, he would shut off his phone, unreachable. If you had to reach him, you had to go through Erica. And that time wasn't just for him, but it was for his family. But Charlie would always say, what's the punishment for missing the Sabbath? And he said, well, you missed the Sabbath. It's not supposed to be some law that you're supposed to follow because it's supposed to keep you in check. It's a gift, and it's a gift waiting for you to receive. And all you have to do is 6 days you shall work and 1 day you shall rest. And it's a gift to you. It's something that God's offering you. And so many people are like, no, I don't have time for that. Or they do have time for that, but they would rather spend their Saturday scrolling on social media or watching TV instead of resting, or they want to work because it helps keep them busy, or they're under the false misconception that they are in fact too busy to have a Sabbath. Jesus was not too busy to have a Sabbath. Neither was Charlie Kirk. You can find the time. There's a lot of very successful people throughout the world who honor the Sabbath and still go on to have their busy 6 days a week. But it's a gift that's waiting for you to receive. And Charlie wrote a whole book about it. It's coming out very soon. He actually literally on the week before 9/10, September 10th, we were in Asia together. And on the flight to Asia, he had the whole manuscript. It was super thick, and he had just finalized it, and it was ready for print. And the whole thing is, the name of the book is Stop in the Name of God. And it's all about the Sabbath and how it can change your life. And it's the gift for you to receive, not a lot to keep you in check or to slow you down. And the punishment for missing the Sabbath is you missed the Sabbath. Yeah. Well, I will say, like, growing up, my family, my dad and I started a pizza restaurant when I was 10, and I worked there all the time. I was the head dishwasher at 10, but we were closed on Sunday. And, in the pizza world, Sunday's a busy day. I mean, pizza is a family food. It's a food you eat during football games, which are always played on Sundays. And it was a big, financial sacrifice for us. But looking back, all the memories that we have as a family, I mean, it was just laying back, being with the family, having a family meal. It was sacred. It was holy. Yeah. I think we really need to get back to that and encouraging people to get back to that. But the last lesson that you wrote about is leaving it all on the field. Yeah. And I think that's obvious about Charlie. He was a workhorse. He was always busy. But I want to ask you, when was the first time you noticed that quality about him, that was kind of his mindset?
You always saw it every time he gave a speech, the amount that he prepped for it or how deep he wanted to go on a question. One of my favorite stories about it, though, is when we were at Cambridge University back in May of this year, and Charlie was debating at Cambridge and Oxford. And at Cambridge, they had filled the room with opposition. And so me and Blake Neff, who's on our team, we're the only two people that would clap every time Charlie was done with a point. But then everybody else would interrupt him clapping, and they were just, it was nasty the way it had been set up. And Charlie, with everybody against him, this whole room, it's hot in there. There's no AC. He's just sweating, and everybody's against him. There's these nasty questions that they're asking him. It has nothing to do with substance of furthering dialogue and free speech, and everything to do with attacking his character and trying to get a one-liner on him for social media. And I thought it was so funny because at the end, they're like, all right, that concludes the questions. And Charlie grabs his mic and goes, no, bring me more questions. And he leans in, he's like, Charlie's Scottish blood is boiling. And that was Charlie. He was in the field. He was in the arena. He wanted more. Nobody was going to stop him from winning or fighting back. And that was his spirit. And he always prepped. He always was ready. He was like a good athlete, a well-trained athlete. And that's how he ended too. He was facing forward in the arena, doing what he loved, answering questions with students, throwing out hats, bringing joy to the lives of so many. And that's how it ended for him. It ended exactly how he worked his entire life to honor so many, honor God, honor students and the younger generation. And he died doing what he loved.
He literally left it all on the field.
Yeah. Quite literally.
All right, Mikey, I've taken up so much of your time, and I really appreciate it. Just in closing, what do you think Charlie would want this next generation, Gen Z and the one that's coming after it? What do you think, if he could simplify it all down to one message, what do you think he would say?
Find the order, which is God. And then his tweet that I just keep referencing over and over again. Get married young, have more children than you can afford, participate in the society in which you live, and honor the Lord. That will bring you the most order in your life. There's a lot of chaos in your life, confusion. The future is rough and hard to navigate, but you can navigate it with the order that God brings. That's the message you would give.
God bless you. God bless him. God, thank you, God, for Charlie. That's what I've been saying this whole time over last month is like, we didn't deserve him, but God gave him to us anyway. And I'm just so grateful. We've all got Charlie stories. You've got some amazing ones. And I've loved this conversation, Mikey. I'd love to have you back on to go even further into the Charlie stories. Because, where can people find you, and where are you guys directing people to get involved and help Turning Point?
Yeah, it's tpusa.com/get involved. That's the best way. If you're a student, join a chapter. If there's not a chapter at your school, go start one. You can find that all on our website, tpusa.com. It's pretty easy to navigate. If you want to find me, I'm on Instagram, mikey.mccoy, or X, Michael_McCoy. But yeah, get involved and start by coming to America Fest. It's in December. It's a great event.
It is. That America Fest was my first time going to a Turning Point event. It was back in 2021. And I was just blown away. It is nothing like anything you've experienced before. So I can't regret it enough. Definitely get to America Fest. It's one of the best parties, and you're going to learn a lot.
Exactly.
And so, Mikey McCoy, thank you so much for joining the Terry Schilling Show. Thank you guys so much for joining and watching. Give us a like and share, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mikey. I think you just got to make sure